Thank you. I'll call to order the joint meeting of Glendale City Council and Glendale Housing Authority.
It's a joint meeting.
Mr. Sakian, roll call, please, for council.
Moment, please. Council members Friedman.
Here.
Garpetian.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Sinanian.
Here.
Mayor Devine.
Here. And for housing.
Authority members Devine.
Here.
Friedman. Here. Garpetian.
Here.
Kelly.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Brazian.
Here.
Chair Sinanian. Here.
And your report, please.
The agenda for the June 7th, 2016 joint public meeting of the City Council and the Housing Authority was posted on Thursday, June 2nd, 2016 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. And first item, please.
First item is Director of Community Development regarding Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act public hearing for California Municipal Finance Authority proposed issuance of approximately $25 million in tax-exempt revenue bonds in support of... I'm sorry?
That's
No,
last time.
That's the last item we're going to?
That's last week.
Well, that's last week's. I apologize. We are looking for...
Housing Authority budget.
Yeah, the housing meeting. The agenda, we had it here just a second ago, sorry. Oh, here it is. The Director of Community... We have the Directors of Community Development and Finance regarding adoption of 2016-17 Glendale Housing Authority budget. 1A is a resolution of City Council making findings and approving expenditures of low moderate income housing asset funds for administration and planning and expenditures outside redevelopment project areas for 2016-17 Housing Authority budget. B is a resolution of the Glendale Housing Authority making findings and approving expenditures of low moderate income housing asset funds for administration and planning of expenditures outside redevelopment project areas for 2016-17 Housing Authority budget and adopting 2016-17 Housing Authority budget.
Thank you. That would be the one. Mr. Ochoa?
Seeing as we have a more extensive report tonight, this is just the Housing Authority budget. Bob and Phil will give you a very brief presentation as it just pertains to the Housing Authority. So with that.
Do we have that?
It's coming up.
Madam Mayor, whether they're bringing that up, these are numbers that you have seen in your budget study sessions. So we are somewhat brief and try and give you an overview of the entire housing budget. These are the different, we've broken this down, and again, you'll see these numbers throughout the presentation, but we've broken it down into types of programs that we have. Our Glendale vouchers in our rental assistance program, we have 1,592 authorized vouchers. We've deployed about 1,565, 66. The number that you see there, the $15.3 million, is about $2.5 million more than we received last year. However, our rental costs have also gone up. So we're stable at about 1,565 vouchers. You'll see the number of portables. That $14.4 million is based on that number that we're estimating. We use some for administration to implement these programs. In our housing development, we use home funds. Our annual award this year is $922,000. We have a prior balance of 198. We'll combine that with some other program income, and we'll have about $1.2 million. The low moderate income housing fund, we're listing here $600,000 because this was all started in process prior to our loan repayment being received. So this number may actually jump, but for budget purposes, this is the number that we want to use. It would only go up. And then finally, we have some loan and rental payments, interest. And then in the final group is the Continuum of Care. This is a federal program that's implemented by Community Services and Parks. That grant of 2.3 is just a little less than what we received last year.
To give you a recap of the pure numbers on the various funds on the revenue side, as Phil mentioned, you can see what the revenues were relative to last year and what's proposed in 16-17. The total for the funds was $34.7 million last year, and it's $37 million this year, a bit over almost $2.25 million more this year. in total, the lion's share being obviously in the Housing Assistance Fund. In terms of the appropriations side, again, roughly what the revenue that comes in, the appropriations are $36.7 million. Again, the lion's share in the Section 8 housing at $32.7 million for, again, a grand total appropriation of $36.7. And then in summary, in looking at the total amounts for what the revenue is against the appropriation, what the use of fund balance is, and that's typically get the revenue in appropriations as much as possible, but oftentimes we'll use some of the fund balance. So again, that's a recap of the revenues coming in and the appropriations for this upcoming budget year.
Just to pat yourselves on the back because you deserve it, these are some of the things that you did in the last year. We finished Veterans Village. The Chestnut Project was completed. Glendale Arts Colony is on its way. We know that applications are out now for the tenant selection on that. Coming up will be Lomita, Habitat Lomita, that will start construction in shortly next year. And then Fifth and Sonora, which is the item you just heard, we're almost ready to select a developer. We're doing final interviews. So in a snapshot, that's what the Housing Authority was able to accomplish last year. Some trends going forward, pretty stable for everything. We've seen our Glendale vouchers stayed the same. The portables, same. They fluctuate up and down a few, but for the most part, they are pretty stable. Housing development, our funds in home, we had a real decrease in the last several years, but over the last two, they seem to be leveled out. And that really is up to Congress. The redevelopment set aside, we know with the elimination of redevelopment, we lost our biggest funding source for housing, for affordable housing. However, we do set aside 20% of every dollar that is used to repay the city loan, and that is included in the numbers that you were looking at just earlier in this program. Continuum of care. That number, it continues to grow by a project every year. So you get your amount that you got last year plus some funding for a program. 2011 bonds. Now that we have resolved our litigation with the state, we have freed up those 2011 bonds. Mr. Manukian is holding $7.5 million for us in the city's treasury that we can start to deploy along with some other things. And then we really look to one of the things that we want to focus on, and we'll be calling on you to help and represent Glendale, is advocate for some long-term funding source for affordable housing. The legislature just absolutely needs to make that happen. With the elimination of redevelopment, most of the affordable housing has come to a standstill. So we want to make sure that the programs are good for Glendale that do come out of Sacramento.
Yes, Mr. Marpetti.
Quick question: that $7.5 million that sits in our account, when can we deploy that?
We should be able to this year. We're trying to go back through the latest legislation to see if we have to get approval on that from the Department of Finance. I don't think we do. We merely need Oversight Board approval. So those dollars should be available to us beginning next year.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you.
And I apologize. It's a City Council and Housing Authority meeting, so Madam Mayor calls it.
Should I ask the same question?
No, you don't have to do that. Thank you. Is there discussion? Any questions from council? Okay, do I have a motion can we take both of those together, Mr. Garcia?
Madam Mayor, one is a council resolution and the other one is a housing authority resolution, so you have to take them separately.
All right. So for the resolution for City Council, have a
The
motion?
housing is 1A, right?
That's council.
Council is 1A.
I'll move 1A.
Seconded.
Roll call, please.
Council members: Friedman,
Yes.
Garpetian,
Yes.
Najarian, Sinanian,
Yes.
Mayor Devine.
Yes. And for the resolution for the Housing Authority, I have a motion.
I move 1B.
Second. And roll call, please.
Authority members: Devine,
Yes?
Friedman,
Yes.
Garpetian,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Najarian, Brazilian,
Yes.
Chair Sinani.
Yes.
Thank you. Next item.
Next item is there a motion to?
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And for Housing Authority?
Second.
And we are adjourned.